I'm Rebecca Mitchell, 34. And I never thought I'd be homeless at my mother's dining table. You need to be out by the weekend, Mom announced casually between bites of roast chicken. The house is going to Cassandra instead. My sister's triumphant smirk flashed across the table as Mom slid the property deed toward her. The childhood home I'd renovated for the past 5 years while caring for our dying father was being handed to my sister who hadn't visited him once. As tears welled in my eyes, I made a silent promise. This betrayal wouldn't define me. It would become their biggest regret. If you've ever experienced family betrayal, you know that hollow feeling in your chest. I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you've faced something similar. This journey from betrayal to justice changed my life forever, and I hope sharing it helps someone else. Hit subscribe if family drama stories help you process your own experiences. And let's dive into how my world collapsed that night. I used to believe that being the responsible child meant something, that sacrifices would be recognized, appreciated, even rewarded. My story starts 5 years before that fateful dinner, when I was working as an architect at Meridian Partners in Chicago. I had just been promoted to lead designer on a major downtown renovation project when Dad's diagnosis came through: early onset Alzheimer's. Advancing rapidly. "Becca, I don't know what to do," Mom sobbed over the phone. "I can't handle this by myself." There was never really a choice for me. My sister Cassandra had 3 young kids and lived in Seattle. "I can't possibly move back," she'd said during our family conference call. "The kids are in school, and Ryan's job is here. You understand, right?" Of course I understood. I was single, successful, but ultimately unattached. The perfect candidate for family sacrifice. Within 2 weeks, I had negotiated a leave of absence from my firm, packed my apartment, and moved back to our family home in Michigan. What I thought would be a temporary arrangement stretched into years as Dad's condition deteriorated more rapidly than expected. Our childhood home, a beautiful 1,920 seconds Craftsman with intricate woodwork that Dad had lovingly maintained, needed significant modifications to accommodate his changing needs. The narrow doorways couldn't fit a wheelchair, the bathroom wasn't accessible, the stairs were becoming a death trap. As an architect, I knew exactly what needed to be done, and I had the savings to make it happen. "This place needs work, Mom," I said during my first week back. "I can use my savings to renovate. Make it safer for Dad." She nodded absently, already overwhelmed by the medication schedule. "Do whatever you need to, Rebecca. I trust you." It wasn't a formal agreement about ownership, but it felt like one. Why else would I pour over $120,000 of my own money into someone else's house? The renovations were extensive but thoughtful. I widened doorways, installed a wheelchair-accessible shower, created a first-floor bedroom suite for Dad, updated the kitchen to make it safer for him during his increasingly confused episodes, and added ramps and handrails throughout. I preserved the character of the home while making it functional. Each decision was made with love, both for the house itself and for my father. Dad and I had always been close. As a child, I would follow him into his workshop, fascinated by how his hands could transform raw wood into beautiful pieces. "You've got the eye, Becca," he'd say, showing me how to sand with the grain. "You see the potential in things." He taught me to use his tools when I was barely tall enough to reach the workbench, setting me up with increasingly complex projects as my skills improved. The renovations became our final project together. On his good days, Dad would sit and watch me work, occasionally offering advice or telling stories about when he'd installed the original molding or refinished the floors. "You're doing good work, Becca," he'd say, his eyes clear and present. "This old house needed someone who understands her." Those moments became increasingly rare as his disease progressed. The father I knew disappeared bit by bit, replaced by a confused, sometimes angry stranger who didn't recognize his own home, his wife, or eventually, me. But I kept going, both with the renovations and with his care. Mom was present but distant. She handled Dad's medications and doctor's appointments but struggled with the emotional aspects of his care. When he would become agitated or have accidents, she would retreat to her room, leaving me to calm him down or clean him up. "I can't bear to see him like this," she'd say. He wouldn't want me to remember him this way. Cassandra called occasionally, always with an excuse for why she couldn't visit. Her kids had activities. The flights were too expensive. Work was too demanding. "How's Dad doing?" she'd ask, and then interrupt my response with stories about her children's achievements or her husband's latest promotion. "You should really try to visit," I said during one call. After Dad had asked about her 3 times in one day, "It would mean a lot to him." "You know I can't," she replied. "Besides, you're doing such an amazing job. Mom says the house looks incredible." That was the first indication I had that Mom and Cassandra were in regular contact. Mom rarely mentioned speaking with her. Nathan entered my life unexpectedly during this period. He was the contractor I hired for the major structural work on the house. A tall, bearded man with kind eyes who didn't mind working around Dad's unpredictable schedule. He started staying after hours, sometimes just sitting with Dad so I could take a shower or go for a walk. "You need to protect yourself legally," he told me one evening as we sat on the porch. Dad was having a rare good day and was napping peacefully. "All this money you're putting into the house? You should get something in writing." "It's family," I said, dismissing his concern. "Mom knows what I'm doing, and Dad always wanted me to have the house eventually." Nathan frowned. "Family can be complicated when money's involved. Just think about it." I didn't take his advice. I was too busy juggling contractors, caregivers, and Dad's increasingly demanding needs. Besides, bringing up legal documents seemed callous while Dad was still alive. It would look like I was waiting for him to die, counting on an inheritance. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. The way Mom would redirect conversations when I brought up long-term plans for the house. Her reluctance to discuss what would happen after Dad was gone. The slightly too interested questions Cassandra would ask about the renovations during our infrequent calls. "Are you keeping the original hardwood? How much is that costing? Are you documenting everything?" Dad passed away on a Tuesday morning in early spring. I was holding his hand, telling him about the garden I was planning for the backyard, when he simply stopped breathing, just slipped away between one word and the next. The funeral was small, mostly old colleagues from the factory where he'd worked as a foreman. Cassandra flew in with her husband and kids, staying at a hotel rather than in the house. "It's just easier with the kids," she explained, though there was plenty of room. She spent most of the visit criticizing my renovation choices and taking inventory of Dad's tools in the workshop. "Ryan could use these," she said, picking up Dad's prized handmade planes. "They're just gathering dust here." The 3 months between Dad's death and that fateful dinner were strange and tense. Mom seemed both relieved and lost, wandering the house like she was seeing it for the first time. I tried to build a new relationship with her, inviting her to help with the garden, suggesting day trips, offering to teach her how to use the woodworking tools Dad had loved. "I'm not interested in any of that," she said. "I never was. That was you and your father." There was an edge to her voice I couldn't quite place. Bitterness? Resentment? I should have seen it coming. Should have listened to Nathan. Should have gotten something in writing. But even with all the signs, I never imagined my own mother could sit across from me at our family table and make me homeless with a few casual words. I spent all day preparing that dinner. Pot roast with garlic mashed potatoes, Dad's favorite meal that Mom had taught me to make when I was 12. Fresh rolls from scratch. Apple pie cooling on the windowsill. I even pulled out the good china, the set that only appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas. This dinner was meant to be a new beginning. I planned to discuss turning the front room into a rental unit to help with expenses. Maybe talk about Mom taking a trip she'd always wanted to go on. With Dad gone, we needed to figure out our next chapter together. The doorbell rang at exactly 6:30. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and hurried to answer, surprised to find not just Mom but Cassandra standing on the porch. "Cassie? I didn't know you were in town." I stepped back, momentarily thrown by her presence. "Surprise," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was dressed expensively, her designer purse hanging from one arm. Mom said it was important family dinner, so I flew in. Mom breezed past me without a hug. "Something smells good. Is that Harry's pot roast?" She never called Dad by his first name when he was alive. That should have been another warning. Where are Ryan and the kids? I asked Cassandra as I closed the door. Hotel. This is grown-up business. She exchanged a look with Mom that sent a chill down my spine. I texted Nathan quickly. Something weird is happening. Cassandra showed up unexpectedly. His response was immediate. Want me to come over? No, I replied. It's fine. I'll call you after. That was a mistake. Dinner began pleasantly enough. We filled our plates, and Mom commented on how nice the dining room looked with the new light fixture I'd installed. Cassandra asked superficial questions about my life since Dad's passing, though she seemed more interested in the house than in my well-being. Have you thought about what's next for you, Rebecca? Mom asked, cutting into her pot roast with precise movements. Actually, that's why I wanted to have dinner, I said, setting down my fork. I've been thinking about the house, about making it sustainable for us. I could turn the front room into a small apartment, generate some income. Cassandra and Mom exchanged another look. That won't be necessary, Mom said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the table. I've made some decisions about the house. My stomach tightened. What kind of decisions? I've decided to transfer ownership to Cassandra, she said, sliding the envelope toward my sister. She has 3 children who need stability, a good school district. The house will be better utilized with a family in it. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What are you talking about? I live here. I've been living here for 5 years. I renovated this entire house. By choice, Mom said, her voice cold. Nobody forced you to come back, Rebecca. Nobody forced you to spend your money on renovations. But we discussed this, I stammered, looking between them. When I moved back, when I started the renovations, you knew I was investing in this house because it would eventually be mine. I don't recall ever promising you the house, Mom said with a dismissive wave. You assumed. Cassandra pulled the documents from the envelope, her eyes gleaming. The transfer is already completed. Mom signed everything yesterday. Yesterday? I could barely breathe. You've been planning this? For how long? About a year, Cassandra said with a casual shrug. After Dad's diagnosis worsened, Mom and I started discussing the future. The house is worth a lot more now, thanks to your work. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I couldn't process it. I put over $100,000 into this house. Everything I had saved. And it looks lovely, Mom said, taking another bite of the dinner I'd spent all day preparing. We appreciate all you've done. You can stay through the weekend, Cassandra added with false generosity. But we'll need you out by Monday. The contractors are coming to redo the kitchen. That farmhouse sink was a really impractical choice. Tears burned in my eyes. The farmhouse sink was Dad's idea. He picked it out. Mom's face hardened. Your father isn't here anymore, Rebecca. This is my house, and I've decided to give it to Cassandra. That's final. It's our family legacy, Cassandra added with practiced sincerity. My children deserve to grow up in their grandparents' home. Your children who visited their grandfather exactly twice during his illness. My voice rose. Your children who don't even know which bedroom was his. While I bathed him, fed him, held him when he cried because he couldn't remember his own name? That was your choice, Mom repeated, her voice like ice. You chose to come back. You chose to renovate. Nobody promised you anything. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. How can you do this? After everything I sacrificed? My career, my life in Chicago, my savings? 5 years of my life dedicated to Dad in this house? Don't be so dramatic, Cassandra sighed. You can start over. You're still young. And where am I supposed to go? Everything I own is here. You'll figure it out, Mom said, returning to her meal. You always do. That's why I wasn't worried about giving Cassandra the house. You'll land on your feet. You're resourceful. The casual cruelty of it stunned me. They had planned this ambush, timed it perfectly, and were now sitting at my table, eating my food, dismissing 5 years of my life as an unfortunate choice I'd made. Is this because of Dad? I asked Mom, suddenly understanding. Because he and I were close? Because he wanted me to have the house? A flicker of something crossed Mom's face. This isn't about your father. This is about what's best for the family going forward. I'm not family? My voice broke. Of course you are, sweetie, Cassandra said with syrupy condescension. You're welcome to visit any time. The kids would love to see their Aunt Becca. Maybe for Christmas? I grabbed my purse and keys. I need some air. Rebecca, Mom called as I headed for the door. If you fight this, if you try to contest it legally, I'll cut you off completely. No contact, no family holidays, nothing. Think carefully about your next move. I turned back, barely recognizing the woman who had raised me. You already have cut me off. You just don't have the courage to admit it. I stormed out, leaving behind the photo album of Dad I'd planned to give Mom after dinner. My old Subaru, already showing its age, refused to start for several minutes. When it finally turned over, I made it just a few blocks before it died completely, a fitting metaphor for my life at that moment. Sitting in my dead car, I called Nathan, sobbing so hard he could barely understand me. He came immediately, towed my car to his place, and held me while I fell apart. I have nowhere to go, I kept saying. They took everything. You have me, he replied, stroking my hair. We'll figure this out together. But in that moment, betrayed by the people who should have loved me most, I couldn't see how anything would ever be okay again. I wonder if you've ever had that moment where your entire world shifts beneath your feet. Drop a comment below if you've experienced family betrayal and how you handled it. The next part of this story gets darker before it gets better. So make sure you're subscribed to see how I went from homeless to reclaiming what was rightfully mine. That first night, I couldn't bear to go back to the house. I slept in Nathan's spare room, wearing borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt, staring at the ceiling until dawn. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Mom, not with apologies but with instructions. When I could come pack my things, what furniture I could take, nothing that had been in the family, how I needed to leave my keys on the counter. Nathan's roommate situation made it clear I couldn't stay long. He shared the small 2-bedroom apartment with a friend from his construction company. And while they were both kind about my situation, the walls were thin and the bathroom schedule already complicated. You can stay as long as you need, Nathan insisted, but I knew it wasn't sustainable. The next morning, I began the humiliating process of job hunting while essentially homeless. My architecture firm in Chicago had long since filled my position. The local firms weren't hiring. I eventually found work at a home improvement store, using my design knowledge to help customers plan their renovations. The irony wasn't lost on me. I tried reasoning with Mom through calls and texts. Each attempt was met with the same cold response. The decision is final. Accept it or lose your family completely. My encounter with Cassandra at Starbucks a week later only made things worse. I spotted her ordering a complicated latte and approached, thinking maybe sister to sister we could find some common ground. Cassie, please, I said, my voice low to avoid making a scene. Can we talk about this? I put everything I had into that house. She glanced around, clearly embarrassed to be seen with me in my wrinkled clothes. There's nothing to discuss, Rebecca. Mom made her decision. The house is mine now. But why? You don't even live in this state. You have a beautiful home in Seattle. Why take the only thing I have? Her expression hardened. Because it's worth almost twice what it was 5 years ago, thanks to your renovations and the neighborhood improvement. Because I have 3 college funds to build. Because Mom offered it to me, and I'd be an idiot to say no to free equity. So you're just going to sell it? The betrayal deepened. It's not even about family legacy or the kids growing up there. Of course we're selling it. Ryan's job is in Seattle. I was never going to move back to Michigan. She grabbed her drink. Look, I'm sorry it worked out this way. But business is business. Maybe next time get things in writing. She walked out, leaving me standing there, the familiar weight of anxiety pressing on my chest. These attacks had started shortly after Dad's death and worsened with each passing day of uncertainty. My financial situation was dire. My savings were gone, invested in a house that no longer belonged to me. The meager salary from the home improvement store barely covered the rent on the studio apartment I eventually found, a dingy space above a laundromat that filled with the smell of fabric softener every evening. I consulted a lawyer, scraping together the consultation fee from my first paycheck. His assessment was blunt. Without a written agreement, I had limited options. I could sue for the value of the renovations, but it would be costly and might not succeed, especially given that Mom was the sole owner after Dad's death. "Did your father leave a will?" he asked. Mom said he didn't, that everything automatically went to her. The lawyer looked skeptical but didn't push. "If you do pursue legal action, be prepared for a fight. Family lawsuits get ugly fast." The humiliation continued to pile up. I had to store most of my belongings in Nathan's parents' garage. My former colleagues, hearing about my situation through the industry grapevine, sent awkward messages of support but no job offers. The anxiety attacks worsened, accompanied by insomnia that left me exhausted during the day. The final blow came when I had to give away Dad's dog, a gentle golden retriever named Rusty who had been his constant companion. My apartment didn't allow pets, and I couldn't afford the pet deposit even if they did. Nathan's roommate was allergic. In the end, one of the nurses who had helped care for Dad adopted him. She sent me pictures sometimes, which only made the loss more acute. My studio apartment was barely habitable. The shower ran either scalding or freezing. The single window faced a brick wall, and the kitchen consisted of a mini fridge, a hot plate, and a sink that drained too slowly. But it was all I could afford, and even then I was living paycheck to paycheck. One rainy Saturday, I drove past the house, a masochistic impulse I couldn't resist. A dumpster sat in the driveway, filled with debris I recognized immediately. The custom cabinets I'd designed for Dad's art supplies, the farmhouse sink he'd loved, the accessible shower fixtures that had made his final months more dignified. Cassandra was gutting my renovations, erasing my work, and, by extension, erasing me. The rumors started circulating through the family soon after. Mom was telling relatives that I had abandoned Dad's care in the final months, that I had moved out by choice, that I was being dramatic about the house situation. Distant cousins and aunts I hadn't seen in years sent judgmental messages or avoided me entirely at a family wedding I forced myself to attend. That wedding was its own special form of torture. I wore the only nice dress I still owned, one that hung loose on my frame after weeks of stress-induced weight loss. Relatives whispered as I passed. Cassandra paraded around with her perfect family, accepting congratulations on her new house. Mom acted as though nothing was wrong, introducing me to distant relatives with a plastered smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How's the new apartment, Rebecca?" she asked loudly during the reception, ensuring those nearby could hear. "Finding your feet again?" I left early, sitting in my car crying until Nathan came to drive me home. My old Subaru had finally given up completely, another expense I couldn't afford to fix. "Maybe we should leave," Nathan suggested as we drove back to my apartment. "Start fresh somewhere else. I can find construction work anywhere." The idea was tempting. Escape, rebuild, forget this place and these people who had caused so much pain. I was ready to agree when my phone rang with an unknown number. Rebecca Mitchell? The voice was familiar, but took a moment to place. Yes, this is she. "It's Robert, your father's brother. I've heard some concerning things. I think we need to talk." Uncle Robert had been estranged from the family for years, living in Arizona with minimal contact. I hadn't seen him since I was a teenager. "About what?" I asked cautiously. "About your father's will. The real one." The words sent a jolt through me. "What do you mean?" "The real one?" "Not over the phone," he said. "Can you meet me tomorrow? I'm in town for a few days." That call changed everything. As I hung up, a tiny spark of hope flickered to life. Maybe this nightmare wasn't over yet. Maybe there was still a way to fight back. If you've ever had that one phone call that changed everything, drop a like on this video. The journey from rock bottom to fighting back was about to begin, and I needed every ounce of strength I could find. Subscribe to see how a forgotten uncle and a hidden will turn the tables on my family's betrayal. Uncle Robert suggested meeting at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes. I arrived early, nervous and unsure what to expect. I barely recognized him when he walked in. Older than I remembered, but with Dad's same kind eyes. "Rebecca," he said, enveloping me in a hug that reminded me so much of Dad that tears sprang to my eyes. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." We settled at a corner table with coffee. Robert studied me for a moment before opening his briefcase. Your father and I reconnected about 6 years ago, he explained. We'd been estranged for years, mostly due to your mother's influence. But when he got sick, he reached out. This was news to me. He never mentioned it. He wouldn't have, not with your mother around. Robert's expression darkened. There's a lot about your parents' relationship you probably don't know. He pulled out a document in a sealed envelope. Before his Alzheimer's advanced, Harry made a will. A proper legal will with a lawyer. I was there as a witness. My heart raced. Mom said there was no will, that everything went to her automatically. That's what she wanted everyone to believe. He slid the envelope across the table. In this will, your father left the house specifically to you, Rebecca. He knew you loved that place as much as he did. He also set aside funds for your mother to live comfortably elsewhere if she chose. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. There it was in black and white. To my daughter, Rebecca Mitchell, I leave the family home at 1487 Maple Street, along with all tools and workshop equipment. The document was properly signed, witnessed, and notarized, dated just before Dad's diagnosis. Why didn't the lawyer come forward with this after Dad died? I asked, unable to believe what I was seeing. Your mother told the firm Harry had created a new will during his illness. She produced something, I don't know what, that apparently satisfied them. Robert frowned. I only found out recently when an old friend of Harry's contacted me with concerns. This revelation was just the beginning. Over the next several hours, Robert shared everything he had discovered. There were letters Dad had written to me during his lucid periods, entrusted to his nurse to deliver after his death. Letters Mom had intercepted and hidden. Your mother was always jealous of your relationship with Harry, Robert explained gently. From the time you were small, the way you connected with him, how you shared his love for building and creating. It ate at her. This made a painful kind of sense. Mom had always been colder to me than to Cassandra, more critical, less affectionate. I had attributed it to personality differences, never suspecting a deeper resentment. But the revelations didn't stop there. Robert had discovered financial irregularities in Dad's accounts during his illness. Withdrawals and transfers that couldn't be explained by medical expenses or household needs. I believe your mother was siphoning money from Harry's pension and savings for years, Robert said grimly. Setting it aside for Cassandra? Perhaps. The records show regular transfers to an account I haven't been able to trace. Why would she need to do that? Dad was generous with money. Cassandra has gambling debts, Robert said. Significant ones. Did you know that? I shook my head, stunned. No. She always seemed so put together. 3 failed businesses in the past decade, all funded by your parents. An online gambling problem she's managed to hide from most of the family. Ryan filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago. Though they've kept up appearances, the puzzle pieces were falling into place. Mom's financial support of Cassandra over the years. The urgent need for a valuable asset that could be liquidated quickly. The rush to transfer the house before I might discover Dad's true wishes. Robert pulled out a USB drive next. Your father's friend, Martin, was supposed to be the executor of his will. He had video messages from Harry, recorded statements about his wishes for the house and for you. We went to a library to view the contents. There was Dad, still relatively healthy, sitting in his workshop. If you're seeing this, Becca, it means something's gone wrong. I've arranged for the house to go to you when I'm gone. It's always been yours in my heart. Your mother. She might resist this idea. She has her reasons, old wounds I could never quite heal. But stand firm. That house belongs to you. Tears streamed down my face as I watched him. So alive, so present, so different from the confused man he became in his final years. Robert had more evidence. My childhood diary, which Mom had apparently kept, documenting early signs of her favoritism and emotional manipulation. Financial records showing the value of my renovations to the property. Pictures of the house before and after my work, providing clear evidence of the transformation. Most disturbing were the medical records Robert had obtained from Dad's primary physician, suggesting Mom had been untruthful about the progression of his illness, possibly delaying treatment that might have slowed his decline. Your mother has always been difficult, Robert said carefully. There were concerns in the family about her behavior long before she married Harry. A personality disorder, perhaps, though it was never formally diagnosed. My mother, your grandmother, warned Harry before they married. I felt dizzy with all these revelations. The mother I thought I knew was vanishing, replaced by someone calculating and vindictive. The family narrative I had believed my whole life was crumbling. What do I do with all this? I asked, overwhelmed. You fight, Robert said simply. You take back what's yours. Harry wanted you to have that house. Not just because you're his daughter, but because you understand what it means, what it represents. But Mom threatened to cut me off completely if I contested anything. Hasn't she already done that? Robert asked gently. What more do you have to lose? He was right. I had already lost my home, my savings, my family relationships. The only direction left was forward, through this fight, not around it. I'll help you, Robert promised. I owe it to Harry. And to you. Nathan was equally supportive when I shared everything with him that evening. I knew something wasn't right, he said, examining the will. No one invests that much in a house without some kind of understanding. Together with Robert, we began compiling all the evidence, the will, the financial records, documentation of my renovation expenses, witness statements from Dad's caregivers about his expressed wishes, the video testimony. It was a moral dilemma, preparing to take legal action against my own mother and sister. But with each new discovery, each piece of evidence showing how thoroughly they had planned to deceive me, my resolve strengthened. They didn't just take a house, I realized. They tried to erase Dad's wishes, his legacy. That's something I can't let stand. For the first time since that devastating dinner, I felt a sense of purpose returning. This wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but I would fight for what Dad wanted, for what I deserved, for the truth. The weight of these revelations has been enormous. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that like button so I know I'm not alone in these family struggles. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now might be the time. The next part of this journey shows how I began to strategically rebuild my life and prepare for the battle ahead. The road to justice was just beginning, and I needed every ally I could find. Finding an attorney willing to take my case was the first challenge. Most wanted substantial retainers I couldn't afford. Finally, through one of Nathan's construction contacts, I met Elaine Harmon, a fierce litigator who specialized in inheritance disputes. This is one of the more clear-cut cases I've seen, she said after reviewing our evidence. Undue influence, concealment of a valid will, financial exploitation. I'll take it on contingency. If we win, my fee comes from the settlement. With legal representation secured, I moved in temporarily with Uncle Robert, who had extended his stay and rented a small house outside town. The space and stability allowed me to think clearly for the first time in months. My old architecture firm unexpectedly became an ally. When my former boss learned about the situation through a mutual colleague, he offered me a remote position working on preliminary designs. Your talent is wasted selling paint, he said during our video call. We can't offer full-time yet, but this is a start. That position, combined with weekend shifts at the home improvement store, finally gave me financial breathing room. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, ensuring Mom couldn't access any information through her connections at my old branch. With Nathan's help, I began documenting everything about the house renovations. We compiled before and after photos, material receipts, contractor invoices, and detailed descriptions of each improvement. We calculated the exact value I had added to the property. $160,340,740. More than I realized, I said, looking at the final tally. Quality work isn't cheap, Nathan replied. And you did everything right, no corners cut. We gathered witnesses next. The home health aides who had heard Dad repeatedly state his intention for me to have the house. The neighbors who had watched me care for him daily while Mom was often absent. Dad's friends from the factory who knew about the original will. Each provided sworn statements detailing what they had observed. Cassandra's ex-husband became an unexpected ally. After learning about her plans to sell the family home, he contacted me through social media. She did the same thing to me during our divorce. he explained during our meeting. Hid assets. Lied to the court. I have documentation that might help you. His evidence revealed that Cassandra had discussed selling the house months before Dad's death, contacting realtors for valuation while he was still alive. She had even toured other properties in Seattle, planning purchases with the expected proceeds. Most damning was the discovery that Cassandra planned to sell the house immediately rather than live in it. She had already contacted a real estate agent who specialized in flipping renovated properties for maximum profit. Your work will make her a fortune, my attorney observed grimly. That's why they moved so quickly. They knew exactly what they were doing. With mounting evidence, we developed a comprehensive legal strategy. Rather than immediately filing suit, we would offer a settlement. Return the house to me as specified in Dad's will, or face a very public legal battle that would expose everything. Your mother values her reputation, Elaine advised. The threat of community members learning what she did might be enough. While the legal preparations continued, I focused on rebuilding my life piece by piece. Nathan and I grew closer, our relationship deepening through the crisis. When he proposed on a quiet evening at Uncle Robert's, it felt like the first purely good thing to happen in a very long time. I don't have much to offer right now, I warned him, though I'd already said yes. You have everything I want, he replied, sliding his grandmother's ring onto my finger. The rest is just details. My architectural firm increased my hours as I proved I could work effectively remotely. My designs for an eco-friendly community center received positive client feedback, reminding me that my professional skills remained intact despite everything. Uncle Robert helped me find Dad's workshop tools that had been hidden in the garage before Cassandra could claim them. We rescued his handcrafted planes, chisels, and saws, tools that had shaped both the house and my childhood. He would want you to have these, no matter what, Robert said, as we carefully cleaned each one. These are your inheritance, too. More personal than the house in some ways. My emotional healing began slowly. I started therapy, working through the complex grief of losing both Dad and my relationship with Mom and Cassandra simultaneously. The betrayal trauma ran deep. But naming it helped. You're mourning multiple losses, my therapist explained. Your father, your home, your family relationships, your financial security, and your narrative about your childhood. That's an extraordinary burden. Step by step, I reclaimed my strength. The anxiety attacks became less frequent. I slept through the night occasionally. I started running in the mornings, the physical exertion burning away some of the anger and hurt. Throughout this rebuilding period, we continued gathering evidence and preparing our case. Mom's sister, Aunt Judith, reluctantly confirmed the pattern of behavior I'd experienced. Your mother always favored Cassandra, she admitted when I visited her. Even as babies, there was a difference in how she treated you both. I tried to talk to her about it once. She didn't speak to me for 2 years afterward. Why? I asked. What did I do to make her resent me? Judith sighed heavily. You were Harry's daughter in every way. You looked like him, thought like him, shared all his interests. Margaret always felt left out of that bond. Instead of seeing the beauty in it, she grew bitter. With each new piece of information, our case strengthened. My attorney became increasingly confident about our chances if the matter went to court. The evidence is overwhelming, she assured me. But litigation is always unpredictable and expensive. Let's try the settlement approach first. We drafted a formal demand letter outlining our evidence, including copies of the will, financial records, and witness statements. The letter proposed a clean resolution. Transfer the house back to me as Dad's will specified, and I would waive any claims for additional damages. This is your opening position, Elaine explained. They'll likely counteroffer, be prepared for that. As we prepared to send the letter, I felt a strange calm replace the turmoil of recent months. Whatever happened next, I was no longer powerless. I had truth, evidence, and support on my side. I was honoring Dad's wishes and standing up for myself in a way that would have made him proud. Are you ready for this? Nathan asked as I reviewed the final letter. I thought about everything that had happened, everything I had lost and found again in this journey. Yes, I said firmly. I'm more than ready. The letter was delivered by courier the following morning, setting in motion a confrontation that had been brewing since that fateful dinner. The next phase of this battle would determine not just who owned a house, but whether justice and truth could prevail over deception and greed. Building this case has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. If you're facing your own uphill battle for justice, drop a like on this video for strength. The confrontation that followed changed everything. And if you subscribe now, you'll see exactly how I finally faced my mother and sister with the truth they tried to bury. Sometimes the hardest fights are the ones most worth winning. The response to our letter came within days, not from Mom and Cassandra, but from Gerald Parker, an aggressive attorney known for representing wealthy clients in ugly divorces and inheritance disputes. "They've hired a shark," Elaine observed, scanning his dismissive response. "He's offering 10 cents on the dollar for your renovation costs in exchange for you signing away all claims to the property." Standard intimidation tactic. We countered immediately, attaching additional evidence, including Dad's video testimony. Parker's next response was less dismissive, requesting a meeting between all parties. "They're worried," Elaine said. "Good." Before the meeting, well-meaning relatives organized a family gathering at my cousin's house, ostensibly to make peace before things escalated further. It was a disaster from the start. "We just want what's best for everyone," my cousin Linda said, nervously glancing between me and Mom. "Surely there's a solution that keeps the family intact." "There was a solution," I replied calmly. "Dad's will, which left the house to me." Mom chose to ignore that. Mom maintained her icy demeanor. "I made the decision I felt was best. Rebecca has always been able to take care of herself. Cassandra needed the support more." "Because of her gambling debts?" I asked pointedly. The room went silent. Cassandra's face drained of color. "That's a vicious lie," Mom snapped, but her eyes darted nervously. "I have bank statements showing transfers to cover casino losses," I said. "Dad's pension money that disappeared during his illness. Is that where it went, Cassie? To bookies and online poker sites?" Cassandra stormed out, pulling her husband Ryan along. He looked back at me with an expression that confirmed everything. The family meeting ended in chaos, with relatives taking sides and old grievances resurfacing. 2 days later, Ryan called me. "Cassandra and I are separating," he said without preamble. "I knew about some of the gambling, but not the extent. Not about using your father's money or selling his house. I can't be part of this anymore." His defection was a significant blow to their united front. Within a week, we learned that Mom and Cassandra had attempted to list the house for sale, only to be blocked by the legal action we'd initiated. The confrontation escalated when we all gathered for depositions. Mom arrived looking immaculate as always, but with a brittleness to her composure I hadn't seen before. Cassandra appeared haggard, the strain of her separating marriage and exposed secrets visible in her face. Mom's deposition revealed more than I expected. Under skilled questioning from Elaine, she eventually admitted knowing about Dad's original will. "I felt it was unfair," she stated. "I was his wife for 35 years. The house should have been mine to dispose of as I saw fit." "Did you discuss this with your husband?" Elaine asked. "Harry wasn't thinking clearly even before the Alzheimer's," Mom insisted. "He was always partial to Rebecca. Always favored her. I was correcting an injustice." When asked about the financial transfers during Dad's illness, she became evasive, claiming they were for household expenses she couldn't otherwise document. Cassandra's deposition was even more revealing. Confronted with evidence of her gambling addiction and financial troubles, she broke down. "Mom promised me the house would solve everything," she sobbed. "We'd sell it, pay off my debts, have enough left for the kids' college. I never thought about what it meant for Rebecca. Mom said she deserved it after monopolizing Dad for years. This was a narrative I'd never heard before, that I had somehow monopolized Dad's attention and affection, as if love were a finite resource I'd greedily consumed." As the legal proceedings continued, we uncovered a childhood incident that seemed to explain much of Mom's behavior. When I was about 8, I had won a father-daughter woodworking competition with a birdhouse we'd built together. According to Aunt Judith, Mom had been publicly humiliated when someone commented that I was all Harry, nothing of Margaret in her at all. "She took it hard," Judith explained. "After that, she seemed to see you as a rival for Harry's attention rather than as her daughter. It wasn't rational, but it was real to her." This revelation was both illuminating and heartbreaking. A mother's jealousy of her own child had shaped decades of family dynamics, culminating in this painful legal battle. During this period, Cassandra's children reached out to me secretly through social media. "We miss Grandpa's house," her oldest wrote. "Mom says we can't talk to you, but we don't understand why. You always made the best cookies when we visited." I responded cautiously, not wanting to put them in the middle of adult conflicts, but treasuring this small connection to the nieces and nephew I'd barely been allowed to know. Our case strengthened when renovation photos began circulating among mutual family friends. I hadn't shared them, but Nathan had shown some to his contracting colleagues, and word spread. The before and after transformation was stunning, making Mom and Cassandra's actions look even more callous and calculated. The judge assigned to our case, a no-nonsense woman with decades of experience in family law, made her preliminary impressions clear during an early hearing. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted thus far," she noted, "and I have serious concerns about the concealment of a valid will and the apparent financial irregularities during Mr. Mitchell's illness." This judicial skepticism sent Mom into a panic. According to a cousin who remained neutral in the conflict, she attempted to destroy some of Dad's remaining personal effects, perhaps fearing they contained additional evidence. Fortunately, most important items were already secured with Uncle Robert or in Nathan's parents' storage. Throughout these difficult months, Nathan and Uncle Robert remained steadfast supports, reminding me why I was fighting when the emotional toll became overwhelming. "This isn't just about a house," Nathan would say. "It's about your father's wishes, about truth." The most dramatic moment came when I finally confronted Mom directly, requesting a private meeting at her apartment. Surprisingly, she agreed. The woman who opened the door looked older than I remembered, the strain of recent events evident in her face. We sat stiffly in her immaculate living room, the silence stretching uncomfortably. "Why did you hate me?" I finally asked. The question that had haunted me for months. Mom flinched as if I'd struck her. "I never hated you." "Then why? Why take the only thing Dad wanted me to have? Why erase me from the family like I never existed?" Her composure cracked slightly. "You had everything. Harry's love, his attention, his pride. You were always his, never mine. I gave birth to you, but from the moment you could walk, you followed him everywhere. It was always, Daddy this and Daddy that. You never looked at me the way you looked at him." The raw pain in her voice was startling. "I was a child," I said quietly. "Children don't portion out love in measured amounts. You were his shadow, his legacy. I was just there. The woman who kept the house running, who managed everything while he taught you to build things and praised your every accomplishment." Her hands twisted in her lap. "When he got sick, you came back and became the perfect daughter, the devoted caretaker. It was like watching history repeat itself. Everyone praising Rebecca, while I was invisible again. So this was punishment? For loving Dad?" She didn't answer directly. "Cassandra needed me. She always needed me. You never did." In that moment, I saw my mother clearly for perhaps the first time, a deeply insecure woman who had measured love in terms of need and dependency, who had interpreted my independence as rejection rather than as a strength she had helped instill. "I did need you," I said softly. "I always did. But you weren't there. We didn't resolve anything that day, but something shifted. The hatred I'd been carrying began to transform into something more complex, a sadness for what could have been, for the mother-daughter relationship we'd never truly had." As I left, she said one thing that stayed with me. "Harry would be proud of you for fighting. He always said you had his stubbornness." It was the closest thing to validation she'd offered in years. The confrontation with my family brought many painful truths to light. If you've ever had to stand firm against people who should have protected you, leave a comment below. Your story matters too. In the next part, I'll share how justice finally came in an unexpected form. Hit subscribe to see the conclusion of this journey from betrayal to vindication. The court date loomed, and our case grew stronger by the day. Friends and neighbors came forward with statements about Dad's expressed wishes regarding the house. His former colleagues testified about his pride in my architectural career and his excitement about my renovations. Harry told everyone the house would be Rebecca's someday. His best friend Martin testified in a preliminary hearing. He said it was perfect since she was the one who understood the soul of the place, just like he did. The expert testimony about my renovations was particularly damaging to Mom and Cassandra's case. A real estate appraiser provided a detailed analysis of the value I'd added to the property. The improvements Miss Mitchell made increased the property value by approximately 87%, he stated. These weren't cosmetic changes, but substantial architectural upgrades that transformed both the functionality and market appeal of the residence. Throughout these proceedings, Mom maintained a rigid facade, though it cracked occasionally when particularly damning evidence was presented. Cassandra appeared increasingly distressed, her separation from Ryan progressing to divorce proceedings after he discovered additional gambling debts she had hidden. The turning point came when Judge Hartman directly questioned Mom about Dad's will. Her aggressive attorney had tried to keep her off the stand, but the judge insisted. "Mrs. Mitchell," she asked, peering over her glasses, "are you disputing the authenticity of your husband's signature on this will?" "No," Mom admitted reluctantly. "And were you aware of this document's existence prior to your husband's death?" A long pause. "Yes. Yet you represented to the family and to your husband's attorney that no will existed, is that correct?" Mom's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him. Mom's hands trembled slightly. "I felt it was unfair." "Unfair," the judge repeated. "So you took it upon yourself to disregard your husband's legal wishes because you personally disagreed with them?" The courtroom was silent. Mom's carefully constructed justifications were crumbling under direct questioning. "I was married to Harry for 35 years, she said, her voice rising slightly. "That house should have been mine to decide about." "The law disagrees, Mrs. Mitchell," Judge Hartman replied calmly. "Spouses can leave specific assets to whomever they choose, provided other legal obligations are met." After this exchange, Mom's attorney requested a brief recess. When court reconvened, he approached Elaine with their first serious settlement offer. "They're running scared," Elaine told me as we reviewed the terms. "They're offering to return the house to you and cover your legal fees. No additional damages." "Not enough," I said firmly. "There needs to be accountability for the financial irregularities during Dad's illness. And I want written acknowledgement that they concealed his will." We countered. They responded. The negotiations continued for several tense days. Throughout, I remained resolute in my core demands: the house, financial restitution, and formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Cassandra broke first. Without consulting Mom, she sent a private email confessing everything. "I knew it was wrong," she wrote. "I knew Dad wanted you to have the house. But I was desperate, the gambling debts, Ryan threatening divorce if I didn't get things under control." Mom offered a solution that seemed too easy. "I'm sorry, Becca. I can't keep doing this." Her attorney reached out to Elaine the next day, offering to settle separately. This fractured their united front, leaving Mom increasingly isolated. The final settlement came together quickly after that. I would receive the house, plus damages covering my legal fees and temporary housing costs. Mom would repay the misappropriated funds from Dad's pension, with interest. Most importantly, the settlement included a written acknowledgement that they had knowingly concealed Dad's valid will. When the judge approved the settlement, the relief was overwhelming but bittersweet. I had won. But at what cost? My family relationships were shattered. The mother and sister I had known were essentially strangers to me now, their actions having revealed character traits I couldn't unsee. The financial aspects were easier to resolve than the emotional ones. Mom liquidated some investments to repay the misappropriated funds. Cassandra agreed to a payment plan for her portion of the damages. The house was legally transferred back to me, as Dad had intended all along. The community response was mixed. Some relatives felt I'd been too harsh, that family matters should have been handled privately regardless of the injustice. Others expressed support, assuring me they would have done the same in my position. The divide was painful but clarifying, showing who truly valued fairness and truth. Cassandra faced additional consequences beyond our lawsuit. Her gambling addiction became public knowledge, resulting in her losing her position at a financial services company. Her divorce proceeded, with Ryan seeking primary custody of their children based on her instability. Her carefully constructed image of success and perfection had collapsed entirely. Mom's reputation in the community, something she had always guarded zealously, was irreparably damaged. Former friends distanced themselves. Her church group, where she had been a prominent member, quietly suggested she might be more comfortable attending a different service. The woman who had prioritized appearances above all else now faced the reality of being seen for who she truly was. The legal costs had been substantial despite the settlement. Much of the financial compensation went to paying Elaine's firm and covering the expenses of expert witnesses and court filings. Victory came at a price, but one I considered worth paying. Returning to the house was harder than I expected. The first night I spent there after regaining possession, I wandered from room to room, touching the walls Dad and I had painted together. Standing in the workshop where he'd taught me to use his tools, sitting on the porch swing where we'd talked about architecture and dreams. The memory of his presence was everywhere, but so was the pain of recent events. Mom and Cassandra had made some changes during their brief ownership, removing family photos, repainting several rooms, replacing some fixtures. It felt like a strange hybrid of familiar and foreign, a physical manifestation of how life had irrevocably changed. Nathan stayed with me that first night, understanding without words when I needed silence and when I needed comfort. "It will feel like home again," he promised. "Give it time." Uncle Robert visited the next day, bringing the box of Dad's personal effects he'd safeguarded. "He would be so proud of you," he said as we unpacked Dad's favorite books, his collection of antique levels, the family photos Mom had removed. "You fought for what was right, just like he always did." The practical matters of reclaiming the house kept me busy. Cassandra had begun some renovations before the legal proceedings halted them. These needed to be either completed or reversed. There were utility accounts to transfer back into my name, mail delivery to restore, neighbors to reconnect with. Slowly, methodically, I reclaimed the space, making it mine again while honoring Dad's memory in every choice. The farmhouse sink that Mom had derided as impractical went back into the kitchen. Dad's workshop, which Cassandra had begun converting to a media room, was restored to its original purpose. His tools returned to their proper places. The process of rebuilding wasn't just physical but emotional. Each day brought small victories, moments of healing, confirmations that I had done the right thing in fighting for what Dad wanted. The house that had been the site of such betrayal gradually transformed back into a sanctuary, a place of memories and possibilities. As the dust settled, I found myself unexpectedly grateful for the clarity this painful journey had provided. I now understood my family in ways I never had before. I recognized the patterns and dynamics that had shaped our relationships for decades. Most importantly, I knew my own strength in ways I might never have discovered otherwise. The legal victory brought justice, but the true vindication came in honoring Dad's wishes and standing up for what was right, regardless of the cost. As Nathan reminded me during a moment of doubt, sometimes the hardest path is the only one worth taking. With the house legally mine and the lawsuit resolved, I could finally begin to look forward rather than backward. The next chapter would be about building something new from the painful lessons of the past, about creating a different kind of family based on choice rather than obligation. The journey from that devastating dinner to legal vindication had changed me profoundly. I was no longer the trusting daughter who believed family would always protect me, but I was stronger, wiser, and ready to create a future on my own terms, in the home my father had always wanted me to have. I'm curious if you've ever had to fight for justice against all odds. What kept you going when the battle seemed impossible? Drop your experiences in the comments below. In the final part of my story, I'll share how I transformed this painful experience into something meaningful, and how justice sometimes comes in unexpected forms. Subscribe now to see how this family betrayal ultimately led to my greatest purpose. 6 months after regaining the house, I sat in Dad's workshop, sketching plans for a transformation even he might not have imagined. The idea had come gradually as I processed my grief and considered the future of this space that held so many memories. What if we turned it into something meaningful? I had suggested to Nathan one evening. Not just our home, but a place that helps others? The concept evolved into a small residential facility for Alzheimer's patients, utilizing my architectural expertise to create an environment specifically designed for memory care. The large property had enough space for a 6-bedroom addition, while keeping the original house as our residence and administrative area. I called it Harry's Haven and poured all my professional knowledge into creating a space that would have made Dad proud. Each detail was designed with both beauty and functionality in mind. Color-coded pathways to help residents navigate. Memory boxes outside each room containing personal items to help identify their spaces. Secure gardens where residents could safely enjoy the outdoors. My architecture firm was so impressed with the innovative design that they featured it in their portfolio and connected me with specialists in healthcare design. What began as a personal healing project gained professional recognition, positioning me as an expert in memory care architecture. Several family members who had supported me through the legal battle reconnected more deeply as the project progressed. Aunt Judith volunteered regularly once we opened. Cousins offered assistance with fundraising events. Even some relatives who had initially sided with Mom gradually reached out, impressed by the purpose I had found in the aftermath of so much pain. The most surprising development came when Cassandra's children began visiting. Her oldest daughter, Emily, now 16, asked if she could volunteer after school. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," she confessed during her first visit. "But Grandpa was special to me too. I remember how he used to let me help in his workshop when we visited." I welcomed her participation without pressing for details about Cassandra. Through Emily and occasionally her younger siblings, I learned that Cassandra had completed a rehabilitation program for her gambling addiction and was slowly rebuilding her life in a smaller house in Seattle, working an entry-level position at an insurance company. 8 months after Harry's Haven opened its doors to its first residents, I received an unexpected call from a social worker at the county hospital. Mom had suffered a minor stroke and needed rehabilitative care. Her living situation was unsuitable for recovery, and she had limited funds for private facilities. "She listed you as her emergency contact," the social worker explained. "I understand there might be complications given your history." The decision to admit Mom to Harry's Haven was one of the most difficult I'd ever made. Nathan supported me but reminded me that I owed her nothing. "Whatever you decide needs to be for the right reasons, not out of guilt or obligation," he cautioned. After considerable reflection, I offered Mom a place at the facility, establishing clear boundaries from the outset. "I'll be your daughter-in-law's administrator, not your daughter," I explained during our first meeting at the hospital. "If that arrangement isn't comfortable for you, we can find alternatives." Mom, diminished physically by the stroke but still maintaining her composure, nodded once. "I understand." Her arrival at Harry's Haven created an undeniable tension, but I maintained professional distance, interacting with her as I would with any resident's family member. The staff, aware of our history but not its details, followed my lead in treating her with respectful detachment. Over time, something unexpected began to happen. As Mom observed the care and attention given to each resident, as she witnessed the thoughtful design elements that made their lives more comfortable, her perspective seemed to shift. She watched me conduct family orientation sessions, explaining how the facility's features could help their loved ones maintain dignity and independence. She saw the respect I had earned from medical professionals and families alike. "Your father would be proud of what you've created here," she said one afternoon as we sat in the garden. It was the first personal comment she'd made since arriving. "I hope so," I replied simply. There was no grand reconciliation, no tearful forgiveness scene like in the movies. Instead, there were small moments of connection. Mom helping with a holiday decoration project, offering insights about a resident who was struggling, quietly placing a framed photo of Dad in the common room. Nathan and I married in the garden that spring, a small ceremony with Uncle Robert giving me away. Mom attended as a resident rather than as mother of the bride, sitting quietly in the back row. She offered a brief, awkward congratulation afterward, which I accepted with the same polite distance that now characterized our interactions. 2 months after the wedding, I discovered I was pregnant with twins. The joy of this news was complicated by thoughts of how different this experience would be from what I had always imagined. My children would grow up with a loving father and a mother determined to break the cycle of family dysfunction, but their relationship with their grandmother would be unlike anything I had envisioned earlier in life. As my pregnancy progressed, Nathan and I decided to build a new home on the property. a short walk from the original house that now served as Harry's Haven's administrative center. This would give us privacy while maintaining connection to the facility that had become such an important part of our lives. "We're not losing the house," Nathan assured me when I expressed momentary doubt about the plan. "We're expanding its purpose, just like you've expanded your vision for your life." The most profound moment of healing came unexpectedly one afternoon when I was going through the last box of Dad's papers. At the bottom, I found a journal I hadn't seen before, containing entries from his early days of diagnosis when his mind was still largely intact. The final entry read, "Becca came home today, left her whole life in Chicago to help care for me. Margaret thinks it's temporary, but I see the way Becca looks at this old house, how she's already planning improvements in her mind. She belongs here, always has. When I'm gone, this place will be her sanctuary, her canvas. I've made arrangements. She'll make something beautiful of it, and of her life." That's all a father could hope for. Finding his words, his confidence in me, felt like closing a circle. The house had been his gift, not just of property, but of possibility, of faith in what I could create from it. In transforming it into Harry's Haven, I had honored that gift in ways neither of us could have imagined. Mom witnessed this transformation daily as a resident. She watched as I used the skills Dad had nurtured to create something meaningful, something that helped others navigate the same disease that had taken him from us. Whether this brought her regret or understanding, she never explicitly said, but small gestures suggested a grudging respect had replaced her former resentment. The most unexpected development came when I began teaching woodworking classes for residents, including Mom. In the workshop where Dad had taught me, I now guided others through simple projects, finding that the tactile experience often triggered positive memories and provided a sense of accomplishment. Mom proved surprisingly adept, her hands remembering skills I hadn't known she possessed. "Your father taught me the basics when we were first married," she explained when I commented on her technique. "I lost interest after you came along and became his workshop shadow." There was no accusation in her tone, just a statement of fact that offered another piece of the puzzle of our family dynamics. Perhaps she had once shared more of Dad's interests than I had realized, had once felt included in that part of his life before focusing her attention on Cassandra. As I prepared for my children's arrival, I reflected on how differently I would approach motherhood because of everything I had experienced. I would make mistakes, certainly, but they would be new mistakes, not repetitions of the patterns that had damaged my own childhood. The twins were born in winter, a boy and a girl we named Henry and Grace. The first time I brought them to Harry's Haven, bundled against the cold, residents gathered to coo over them, Mom hanging back until most had drifted away. "May I?" she asked hesitantly, holding out her arms for Henry. As she held her grandson, something in her face softened. "He has Harry's chin," she observed quietly. Yes, I agreed. He does. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. What had developed between us? It was more like acceptance of the past we couldn't change, of the limited relationship we could have going forward, of the ways we had both been shaped by love and its absence. The true revenge against the betrayal I had suffered wasn't in regaining the house or winning the legal battle. It was in creating something meaningful from the pain, in building a life and a legacy that honored Dad's memory while breaking free from the dysfunction that had characterized our family for generations. Sitting in Dad's workshop one evening, now modified to safely accommodate residents' projects, I watched as Mom carefully sanded a small jewelry box she was making for Grace. Around the room, other residents worked on their own creations, the peaceful rhythm of sandpaper and soft conversation filling the space. This, I realized, was the true justice, not the punishment of those who had wronged me, but the creation of something that would have made Dad proud. In transforming his house into a haven for others, in using the skills he had taught me to improve lives, I had honored his legacy far more profoundly than any legal victory could have done. The house that had been the center of so much conflict was now a place of healing, not just for the residents we served, but for me, for my new family, and perhaps in some small way, for Mom as well. The cycle of resentment and betrayal had been broken, replaced by something imperfect but hopeful. As I placed my hand on my son's sleeping head that night, I made a silent promise. Your legacy will be different. You will know you are loved for exactly who you are, not for who anyone needs you to be. And in that promise was the final victory over everything that had come before. This journey taught me that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even, but getting better, creating something meaningful from pain that once seemed unbearable. If my story has touched you, please like this video and subscribe to see more authentic family stories. I'd love to know in the comments if you've ever transformed a painful experience into something positive. Has family betrayal ever led you to discover your true strength and purpose? Your stories matter to me, and sharing them might help others still finding their way through similar struggles. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to redemption.